George Orwell's novel Animal Farm is a little book that says a great deal to us about the importance of remembering. The book was first published back in 1945 as a political allegory. It's a story about farm animals who rise up against the farmer. The animals believe that they can create a fairer, freer farm, so they establish 7 commandments to govern their lives together on the farm. They paint the commandments right there on the barn door for everyone to be able to see them. All animals are equal. No animal shall kill another animal. No animal shall sleep in a bed. We have a dog at home that would like a word about that commandment. Over time, the pigs who take charge of the farm start to bend the rules. They rewrite those original commandments ever so slightly at first. No animal shall sleep in a bed becomes no animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. No animal shall kill another animal becomes no animal shall kill another animal without cause. By the end, all animals are equal had been amended to all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. What's haunting about that story is that most of the animals on the farm don't even protest these changes that are made. You see, they can't quite remember what the commandments used to say. And as the collective memory of who they were faded, so did their freedoms. In the Hebrew Bible, the people are called again and again to remember. In our text from Joshua, after Israel crosses the Jordan River into Canaan, Joshua instructs the Israelites to take 12 stones from the river and build a memorial. Joshua says twice in our text, when your children ask in the time to come, what do these stones mean? Then you shall tell them that the waters of Jordan were cut off and Israel crossed here on dry ground. Now, this is not the first time the Israelites have been invited to remember. After rescuing the people from the bondage of Egypt and establishing the Passover, God says in Exodus, when your children ask, what does this ceremony mean to you? Then tell them it is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt. In Deuteronomy, after crossing the Red Sea, the people were told, remember. Remember you were slaves in Egypt. Remember the long way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years through the wilderness. Remember the day you stood before the Lord at Horeb. Remember. You see, when we forget our story, who we are, where we're from, and when we forget the grace of God, we become vulnerable to all kinds of distortions. And on this All Saints Sunday, as we remember that great cloud of witnesses, our church and congregations around the world are participating in this ancient practice of remembering. This year, our day of remembrance falls during a government shutdown. Today, as we gather here to remember our saints, the collective memory of America is being rewritten. Like the animals on the farm, laws aren't just being rewritten, they're being ignored. And many of our politicians who know better, who've witnessed better, are saying and doing nothing to help our country. When our nation's morality is severed from its memory, we forget who we are and what we stand for. It's what happens when our leaders shut down SNAP and send friends and neighbors flying to food pantries. When a nation's morality is severed from its memory, the curriculum gets rewritten in our classrooms. When a nation forgets or willfully ignores the complexities embedded within our stories, then it starts believing a story that couldn't be farther from reality. A story that tells us we're all self-made. That is a story, but it is certainly not the story of this country. And it is a story devoid of theological or ethical grounding. Joshua instructs the people to build a memorial so that they will remember, so that future generations will know. Before Joshua, Moses over and over again implored the people of Israel to remember. Their collective memory informed their mission and gave them the good sense to recognize that none of them, none of us, are self-made. That is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that is not the abundant life that Jesus offers. That is not the inheritance that Ephesians speaks of in our text. The people of old were invited to remember, for in remembering they recognized that indeed they were one another's keepers. In remembering, they understood that without the grace and faithfulness of God, the Exodus story itself would have stopped at the shores of the Red Sea before it ever began. And of course, the Israelites did not always remember, did they? So God raised up prophets to remind the people of who they were and of their obligations to care for the least of these. Amos spoke out against a society that had forgotten the poor and betrayed their calling, and said, "They sell the righteous for silver and the needy for a pair of sandals." Hosea called for a return to love. I desire steadfast love, not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. No, Israel did not always remember. And we do not always remember. But we are invited again and again to the sacred act of remembering. We remember each time we gather around this table and are fed by the gifts of God, remembering the words that Jesus said, "Do this in remembrance of me." Michael Jenkins, the former president of Louisville Presbyterian Seminary, once said that remembering is among the most courageous things we can do. It connects us to our past, but it is also a way that guides our future. The writer of Ephesians points us to a future that is bound up in sacred memory. Frederick Buechner, who is one of my saints, and I know many of yours, wrote an autobiography for which he used as his title, "The Eyes of the Heart." And it's drawn from that verse we read in Ephesians. And Buechner wrote of that verse, "I never even noticed it until it jumped off the page at me the other day. That text that says, 'Having the eyes of your heart enlightened, that you may know what is the hope to which God has called you.' I found those words where I never found them before, when I read them on a day that I met my first grandchild for the first time. What I saw with the eyes of my head was a very small boy with silvery gold hair and the eyes the color of blue denim coming down towards me on the staircase in his mother's arms. What I saw with the eyes of my heart was a life that without a moment's hesitation I could have given my own life for." Where do the eyes of your heart draw you? What is that hope to which you have been called? On this day, we remember the light of God's love as we pause and give thanks for those in our lives who have illuminated the eyes of our hearts, the saints who have taught our hearts to sing. We all carry those saints with us on this All Saints Sunday, and may we give thanks to God for their witness, for their memory, and may we always remember them. Amen.